All right, so we're now calling for the Wednesday, March 3rd meeting of the Fairfax County History Commission, Planning Commission. I am the chair, Cheryl Rapetti, and we are going to begin with checking the audibility of members' voices. So, to conduct this meeting wholly electronically, the History Commission needs to make certain findings for the record to evidence our compliance with all applicable laws. These motions address this compliance. First, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each board member participating in this meeting to state your name and location. I ask that you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to Lynn Garvey Hodge, there we go, so that I may make up the appropriate motions. I move that the History Commission certify for the record that each member's voice, well, let me first do the roll call. So let me conduct that roll call. And so I'm going to have to do this from memory. Hopefully I'll get everybody. And oh, I know, sorry, I'll pull up the participants list. Here we go. All right, so Elizabeth Kroll, just to confirm that we can hear you.
I'm here, Alexandria.
All right, Gretchen Bulova.
Gretchen Bulova in Fairfax.
Lynn Garvey Hodge.
Lynn Garvey Hodge, Springfield District, Fairfax County.
Mary Lipsey. Mary, can you hear us? Mary, well,
You're muted. You're muted, Mary.
Try it now, Mary.
Okay, Mary, you may have to log in again. I don't know if I can see her.
I can see her, but we can't hear her.
Yeah. And I don't see that she's muted anymore. Mary, you may have to either log out and log back in again, or perhaps you need to turn on your computer's microphone if you're working from a computer. I'm going to continue. Megan, I'm going to call the staff just to make sure that we can hear them as well. Megan Lining.
I'm here, Megan Lining, Fairfax.
Okay. Nicole Brannon.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. We have somebody who's an unnamed panelist, Denise. Named only panelist.
Yes, I see that. And I don't know how to ask.
Would it be me? Jordan?
No.
Yeah, on my screen,
It's you, Jordan.
On my screen, it's Jordan.
There we are. It is you, Jordan.
Okay, Jordan.
I can see Jordan. Interesting.
Jordan Tannenbaum.
Yes, Fairfax County, Springfield District.
All right, thank you, Jordan. Phyllis Ford. Phyllis Walker Ford.
Phyllis Walker Ford, Clifton, Virginia.
Lyons.
Sally Lyons, Colchester, Mount Vernon District.
Thank you. Sue Kovac Schumann.
Sue Kovac, Schumann, Mantua.
Tammy Manorino.
Tammy Manorino from Mount Vernon.
Okay. And Steve Sherman. Steve, are you there?
Steve Sherman from Franconia.
All right. And Bob Beach, are you there?
Here from Fairfax. Did you hear me?
Yes, we did. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
good.
And I'm trying to think.
And stunts.
Ann Stuns. Ann, how did I miss you? Sorry.
Calling from Hunter Mill.
Okay.
And Barbara Nafe is in Reston.
Barbara Nafe in Reston and
Peters
Esther McCullough.
Annandale.
Sorry?
Barbara Peters, Annandale.
Okay, Barbara Peters, Annandale. Esther McCullough?
Esther McCullough, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't have video though. But I'm in Herndon.
Okay. But we can hear you at least, Esther. I'm sorry we can't see you. But,
Mary's on now.
oh, Mary Lipsy, can we come back to you? And you have to
You're muted, Mary.
unmute yourself, Mary.
Mary Lipsy.
Yay!
District.
Yay.
We forgot to plug in the webcam.
Great.
All right. Is there anyone else who is who's attending here whom I have not called?
Chris Corbett.
Sorry? Oh, that's
Schaghburg, Virginia.
Thank you, Chris. It's interesting. I guess here you are.
Cheryl, did you get Ann Barnes?
I did not. Ann Barnes, are you here today?
David Meyer?
And David Meyer. David and Ann, are you present?
And Elise Murray.
Elise is on a leave of absence, so I do not expect Elise to be here tonight. David Meyer, are you here? And Ann Barnes.
And Carol Herrick.
Oh, yes, right, Carol. Carol Herrick, are you? Okay. Denise, do you have any indication that those people are here, or they just not joined us yet?
No, I have no indication that the people are here, and I have not heard from any of those four people.
Okay, so I was initially calling attendance from the participants list. It's kind of weird how people sort of slide in and out.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we are ready to proceed to the next step, which is I move that the History Commission certify for the record that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this board.
I second. Gordon.
Either Gordon?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Motion passes. Second, I move that the History Commission certify that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this commission and the public to physically attend this meeting in person, and the usual procedures cannot be implemented safely or practically. As a result, I further move that the FCRHA. Yeah. Yes, I don't know what that is. I think that means that the Fairfax County History Commission got this meeting electronically through a dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 1-844-621-3956 and enter access code 129-520-9946. So moved. Can I have a second?
Second, this is Esther.
Thank you, Esther. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any oppositions? That motion passes. Lastly, we need to dispense with FOIA's usual procedures. I finally move that the History Commission certify that the matters on the agenda today relate to COVID-19 emergency itself, are necessary for the continuity in Fairfax County government, and or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the History Commission's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Jordan.
Okay, Jordan seconds, and all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion
Aye.
passes. And Lynn, can you give me my gavel back?
There we go.
Thank you. All right. Okay, sorry about that rigmarole. Sorry I didn't have a ready list with everybody's names to do the phone call. I do want to note that we are joining us with today Corinne Bebek, who is our substitute clerk. Thank you, Corinne, for joining us and taking your minutes tonight. I also want to welcome Nicole Grant. Nicole, usually we do the presentations right off, but just because it kind of flows with our unfinished business, I hope you don't mind waiting until we do the treasurer's report and minutes.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. And also, Nicole, we are going to also be addressing the Richmond Highway bus rapid transit. So you're more than welcome to stay for that, and that'd be useful if you can. If you can't, I understand. All right.
Excuse me, may I be recognized, please?
Mary?
No, Denise.
May you be recognized? Yes, of course, Denise.
There's somebody on the line, and I just want to make sure that if it's a History Commission member, that they are unmuted. So
yes.
Caller on 703.
Herrick? Is
Hi.
it Herrick?
Thank you. Yes, it is. Thanks, Carol. Sorry. Carol is here now.
Okay. Yes. Please let the record reflect that. Carol, can you tell us where you're calling from?
McLean, Virginia.
All right, and then that clarifies that we can indeed hear Carol. All right, thank you. Thank you, Denise. Okay. I also am going to note that River Farm, Richmond Highway, and Soapstone all sort of got very active this month. So that's going to fill up our agenda a bit for tonight. So I'm going to skip the email security item, at least for this month. We'll table it. All right. Minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes that were?
So moved, Jordan.
Thank you. I'm sorry, what's the formal language for that, Barbara?
I move that we accept the minutes and pay the clerk.
Great, thank you.
This is Esther, a second.
All right. And all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. All right. And that will pay last month's clerk. Barbara Peters, Treasurer's Report.
Okay, well, I mean, I find it interesting to see it included as part of the agenda. I just want to point out that given that we're doing all the reports in advance to make them available, it's not going to be as clean as in the past where I tried to keep all of the revenue and expenses within the time frame of the month preceding our meeting. The books are going to be closing now a week in advance of the meeting. So the dates are going to be a little wonky for a while until we all get used to it. And I'm not sure what I'm going to call the report anymore. So I kind of made some adjustments in that. And I would like to say also that, what doesn't show is our transfer to the Park Authority. It is in process, but wasn't booked before the date that we closed on the 26th of February. So that will show up in next month's report. So we have 27,000 less than what it shows tonight. And also the Park Authority History Commission Conference account also has a refund from the Fairfax City Parks.
What about that?
For the deposit on the conference space in Fairfax City. But that also didn't make the cutoff dates. So that hasn't, it's in process, but it was not booked in time for the report. So I guess we'll sort of get used to things that don't happen in the time frame that we're now using.
Sounds good. And yes, I sent out an agenda for the use of the commissioners that has the various reports included in it. That's not our formal agenda. Our formal agenda that the public sees looks like a regular agenda, but the standard version is just for your convenience.
Barbara, Can I ask a quick question for Barbara?
Yes.
Barbara, what was the refund amount from Sherwood? Do you recall?
I don't
Don't you-
know. I have not seen it yet.
Okay, all right, super. I think it's 450, but we'll find out.
Yeah, that's what I remember also, Lynn, it's about $400. All right, Nicole, if you would like to take over now and do your presentation on the River Farm Historic Overlay District. And if I could ask our panelists to mute, there's some background sound and noise that's coming over.
Before Nicole does that, I hand off the ball. I just want to recognize that Ann Barnes has joined us.
Thank you. Ann Barnes, can we hear you, Ann?
I just had to unmute. I'm here.
Okay, great, Ann. Thank you. We're just sure we can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, Nicole, give me just a second.
No problem.
Let's try that. Okay, I think you have the ball now.
Nothing yet. Oh, yep. Okay. Give me 1 second while I share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Or just one person, let me know.
Yes, we can see it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. And I apologize. I have a two-screen setup, so my notes are on a separate screen. So if I'm not looking directly at you, that is why. Hi, I'm Nicole Brannon. I'm one of the Senior Heritage Resources Planners for Fairfax County. I have been working with Laura Arsenault on the Wellington at River Farm Historic Overlay District proposal. Laura is the PM for this one. I'm helping her out tonight because we've had a number of night meetings this week. So I will hopefully be able to answer any questions that you have. Assuming it lets me. There we go. Okay, so the subject property, Wellington at River Farm, is located at 7931 East Boulevard Drive, and it is immediately adjacent to George Washington Memorial Parkway in the Mount Vernon District. On November 17th, the board requested that staff analyze the feasibility of the creation of a historic overlay district on the Wellington property. In response to that, staff has developed an analysis report to determine if the property has historic significance, as well as a comprehensive plan amendment, a rezoning board's amendment, and a zoning ordinance amendment. We are also working with our consultant on draft design guidelines. The 27-acre property is currently planned for private recreation, and it is zoned R2. There is a governing special exception on the property for a public benefit association, and the property is currently owned by the American Horticultural Society, but it is up for sale, as I'm sure most of you know. There are 2 conservation easements, which you can see on this slide. There's a National Park Service easement, which is about 2.2 acres, and it's located on the western portion of the property over here. I don't know if my cursor is there, but there. Along to preserve the view shed along George Washington Memorial Parkway. The second easement, located over here on the eastern side, is owned by the Virginia Outdoors Foundation and is located, is 8.15 acres. And both easements do restrict the subdivision of the property within those boundaries. So this is the aerial view of the property. You can see that the site is located among residential uses just to the east of George Washington Memorial Parkway. It's bounded to the north by what's known as the Wellington subdivision, which is also zoned R2, the Potomac River to the east, and to the south by large residential parcels that are also zoned R2. The property is accessed by East Boulevard Drive. So I'll now go through the staff analysis and findings, including what the proposed HOD boundaries are, the proposed contributing and non-contributing properties, comprehensive plan amendment, zoning ordinance amendments, and the rezoning to add the overlay district to the maps. The site significance, as I'm sure most of you know, the original River Farm property was owned by George Washington. Washington gave a life estate on the property to Tobias Lear, his personal secretary. Lear lived on the property until his death in 1816. Staff has determined that the period of significance for the property is between 1919 and 1973, or at the time that Malcolm Matheson owned it and renovated the property to mostly what you see today. Mr. Matheson made the modifications to the property in the colonial revival architectural style. It's got the symmetrical facades, square or rectangular floor plans, and it's got the other iconic features like an accentuated front door, pedimented entry porch, supported by the columns, and a doorway with fan lights and side lights. This is a map showing the contributing and non-contributing features that you can see here. Staff found that the boundaries of the proposed historic overlay district should include everything on the tax map parcel that you can see outlined there in purple, and then kind of goes green where the view shed is right there. Within that boundary, staff found that 9 structures and 1 feature could be considered contributing to the potential historic overlay district, and there are 6 features that would be considered non-contributing, and you can see that list there on the right-hand side. Staff determined that a feature or structure was contributing if it was constructed within the period of significance and had the features of the colonial revival style and maintains historic integrity from the time of the Matheson ownership. If it didn't have these characteristics, staff had determined that the feature was non-contributing. The Manor House, which is probably the most well-known structure on the property, is located as Building A, which you can kind of see right in the center right there. It has 2 additions that are contributing, including the kitchen and the ballroom, which you can see that just kind of pop off back here. The green shaded area near the Potomac River is a contributing view shed, as it remains in a similar state as to when the Mathesons owned the property. You can also see the non-contributing features that are there, which include some of the garden, the children's garden, and the meadow, and the ha-ha wall, because there hasn't been enough evidence to show exactly when it was constructed. There's been some conflicting information on that one. And so these are examples of some of the contributing structures. Again, you can see the Wellington Manor House. The original date is possibly 1790, which would be this kind of, there's one end that is what they think to be the older end. We haven't been able to do a full architectural history of the building. And then you'll see the other structures that were built during the Matheson or right before it time, the ballroom, the carriage house, and the caretaker's house. Some more of the structures and features. You can see the view shed, obviously, to the Potomac. We've got the central and western wings of the carriage house and the north garage. So these are some of the examples of the non-contributing structures, the gates that exist out there that were originally from the White House. The new driveway, the original driveway was moved. It's on the property just to the south. There was a land swap, I believe it was in the 90s. And again, there's a picture of the ha-ha wall right there. So the proposed comprehensive plan amendment is editorial in nature, and there is no proposed change to the underlying plan use, which is currently private recreation. The current comp plan language lists Wellington on the county inventory of historic site and encourages its preservation. The proposed modifications to the comprehensive plan include updating the inventory to denote a historic overlay district boundary and adding the boundary of the proposed HOD to the comprehensive plan map. So the proposed zoning ordinance amendments, again, the underlying zoning is R2. So from our zoning group, they said in evaluating the type of land uses to be permitted within the Wellington Historic Overlay District, staff reviewed the list of uses currently allowed in R2 district by right, by special permit, and by special exception to determine which uses would be appropriate in the proposed Wellington Historic Overlay District. Based on this review, staff proposes to continue allowing all of those uses, The use is currently permitted by right in the underlying zoning district, includes single-family detached dwellings, public uses, and accessory uses. Furthermore, staff proposes to allow the board to consider through approval of a special exception, any group within the purview of the Board of Zoning Appeals or category, a special exception, uses permitted in the underlying zoning district subject to these limitations and applicable to those uses. So given the proposed location within a residential zoning district and surrounded by other zoning use or residential uses, staff proposes an additional use limitation to reduce the potential impact to surrounding and adjacent residential properties. Specifically, all off-street parking and loading spaces must be located outside the required minimum side and rear yards unless modified by the board in conjunction with approval of a special exception for any future use of the property. The board may also impose additional conditions and restrictions that it deems necessary to ensure that the use will be compatible with and not adversely impact adjacent residential areas. The proposed use limitations also include a requirement that any use approved by the board use the existing historic resources on the property and demonstrate that the use, including any proposed new improvement, addition, or new structures, be in harmony with the district's specific purpose and intent for the Wellington Historic Overlay District. It also must be compatible with the structure, site, and surrounding properties. In staff's opinion, these limitations will incentivize the preservation and the appropriate reuse of the existing contributing structures on the property by the current or the future owners of the property. The bulk regulations for the underlying zoning district currently limit the maximum building height to 35 feet for single family dwellings and 60 feet for all other structures. Given that the existing main structure on the property is approximately 33 feet in height, staff proposes the maximum building height for all structures be limited to 35 feet, consistent with what is currently allowed for single family dwellings and consistent with the height limit in the majority of other historic overlay districts. So this is the proposed rezoning. And so the rezoning application is just a part of the series of actions to establish the boundaries. And since historic overlay districts are zoning districts, the establishment of a Wellington Historic Overlay District requires the Board of Supervisors approval of a rezoning application to rezone the property into a historic district and also amend the zoning map to create the boundaries of the historic district as you see here. We are also working, as I mentioned earlier, with our consultant, which is EHT Traceries for draft design guidelines, which eventually will be finalized, but I believe that will come after any action by the board if it's approved. So you can see the organization of the guidelines. They're going to preserve the architectural character, preservation and rehabilitation of existing buildings. Then they will have guidelines for architectural compatibility and cohesion with the district. And the guidelines will be there for preserving the setting, including the topography, landscape, and archaeology. These are just some example pages of what the draft design guidelines look like. Luckily, the consultant is the same one as working with the Architectural Review Board and staff to redo all of our existing design guidelines, so they'll be in the same format and style as those. So this is our schedule milestones. Obviously, it's been a very brief and quick schedule. We were authorized in November, and we are heading to the Planning Commission on March 17th. Board of Supervisors on April 13th, and then we will go to the Architectural Review Board for review and motion on the design guidelines to make them final. And as I mentioned before, Laura Arsenault is the project manager, so she will be the person to answer any specific questions more than I can answer tonight, and all of her contact information is up here. And also the staff report, I believe, was released today. So you can get the whole thing online at the county website, which you can see there at the bottom of the screen. And I'm happy to answer questions as best I can for anybody that has them. And I'm sure there are some.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Sorry, go ahead. Who is that?
Mary Lipsy.
Mary.
I just have a question. Are there any docks or piers?
That's a good question. I don't know of any. It's a pretty, Denise has been out there. I haven't actually been able to make it out there myself, but as I understand it, it's a very steep dip down to the river, so I'm not sure that there is.
It's just curiosity on my part.
Yeah.
There's no existing docks at this time.
Yeah, I think historically there were, and I think the neighbors do have a dock, but I don't believe this property does.
That is correct. When we were out there, we could see the pre-existing dock that's down on the water. Right now, there's hurricane fencing blocking off the bottom of the property because, as Nicole said, it's a very steep drop off there. But so there was a pier there during the Matheson period, yes.
So I have a question. Somebody when all is said and done, this preserves the important identified contributing structures, but it also really does allow development, it sounds like, right? So you really could have a lot of it doesn't preserve the open space except for the easement part. Is that?
Yeah, so the two easements have restrictions on subdivision in them. And then, yes, they didn't put a restriction on that central part. However, they do have to go back to the board. So if there is any kind of redevelopment proposal, then the board would have to approve of it. And so based on what I understand is that they feel with the other restrictions that they put in that it would hopefully deter anybody going straight, because I think they were worried that if they completely took that away and rezoned it to not being able to subdivide, it would be considered a taking possibly. So
Yeah, boy, they're walking a fine line, right?
yeah, trying to weave that in there, trying to thread that needle of preserving it as best they can without going too far, for sure.
Thank you.
Actually, Nicole, if you can go back to the slide that showed the contributing structures.
Yeah.
I attended the community meeting last night, and I know there were a lot of people who were concerned about the period of significance that staff had defined. And on that slide of contributing structures, you can see that what happens as a consequence of looking at the Matheson period of significance and defining that as the core period of significance, you've created a historic core in the middle of the property that would be that anybody trying to build additional structures would have difficulty penetrating. They would have to sort of respect that core, and they would have to also build, obviously, in keeping with the character of those buildings and limiting any damage to their integrity. So whereas if you had focused more on the open space, like the historic character or the archaeological features, you actually don't get as much protection. That was my
Yeah, and I know that just because of kind of the abbreviated timeline, obviously as many like the archaeology study, and I think Liz is on the call and she can probably attest to all this too, is, we wouldn't have the time to get it done, but I know that we definitely are recommending that happen because that would obviously just bolster the significance claim. And I'm not sure in the future that they will go back and add anything to it. I know that they've talked about it. So I think that's definitely part of the thought process.
And I can just jump in here for a second. There was a preliminary archaeological study that was done by Jack Hiller and Martha Williams with high school students for a couple of weeks. And I believe it was 1987 on the property. They registered 2 sites with the state, one 19th and 20th century, and another that was a stratified prehistoric site on one of the benches down by the water. But the study that was done was not comprehensive. It was what they could accomplish in the time they had. So when Laura was putting together her staff report and also for this, I prepared some wording that she could put in there for archaeological resources as recommendations, for additional work, down the road. So if anybody has any more questions, I'm glad to answer.
Any other commissioners have any questions or comments?
I would just comment, this is Tammy Manarino, that that I appreciate that staff was able to do this so quickly. I know it took a lot of hours over the holidays and everything to put this together in a timely fashion because, as we've said, the property is on the market. I do think that that it's worth going back after we have this nailed down. Wellington has lots and lots of stories, but we only needed one to get the HOD going and in place, so the Matheson story was a great one to go with because it's got the integrity there. There's a lot that has been unchanged since that period. After this is all set, I do think it's worth going back and getting the archaeology done. And then also I would like to see the view protected to the south. We've got the north and we've got the east. I'd like to see the view to the south protected. And then also the original drive that's along the southern edge of the property too. So that was there for many, many years. And that's where the White House gates originally were placed when Matheson received them in 1937. So hopefully this is, phase one.
Agreed. And I should say, and thanks to Tammy, she's been super helpful to all of us staff with just getting so many resources and background information. So that made a huge difference in the ability to move this forward.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Can I just mention something? And I apologize if you already said this and I missed it, Nicole, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that Senator Scott Servell was successful in passing a piece of legislation. It's SB 1459. It gives Fairfax County the power to prevent subdividing this lot, is the bottom line. And that's really important. So we're very appreciative of Paul Krizek's work on the House of Delegates side as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. No, I hadn't mentioned that too. And I do know, and I think it was in the news today or the last few days, that the offer from the conservation group trying to purchase it was not accepted. So, but it sounds like they're going to continue on trying to raise more money to also purchase the property.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners?
Was there some also some money involved from Richmond?
Yes.
They did.
Yes.
They put $2 million in the budget. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
And that was Senator Adam Eben and Delegate Paul Krizek. So they both did that.
Good.
This is a wonderful transition into our unfinished business because those are kind of the developments that have been happening. It's been a very busy week for River Farm. So we've had the action out of the Virginia Assembly, and then the declining of the offer, but then the Save River Farm campaign came back today and said, hey, we're still going to try for it. We're still going to, work with the community and hopefully talk to AHS and get something worked out. But it's not a fast solution.
But at this point, I think that we also, that you are looking for some support for this historic overlay district from the commission.
Yes.
And so, I think that a letter might be appropriate, but it's up to the commission what they want to do, if they wish to support this and how they wish to voice that support. I also don't know if we could also delegate a person to go to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisor hearings if we want to make our statement known. And so I turn that over to
So is a motion in order? I would say I move that we support the historic overlay district as proposed, and we recommend that the Planning Commission, do we do that? We recommend that the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors approve it.
I'll second. It's Bob Beach.
So that would be in the form of a letter, and Cheryl said a letter and a representative. So those are both good.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to approach it.
When do they need the letter by? You're so on top of this. You know, it's really good that we've got all the best brains right here on this call.
Can I ask a question? Would it be appropriate in the letter, if that's what's approved, to taking a lead from what Gretchen said, to indicate that the commission is, strongly urges that this plot not be subdivided or something of that nature? In other words, indicate that that we think that subdivision here would be an adverse effect to the property.
I think that's a great suggestion, because part of the value of this property is that it is intact.
Right.
And it's remained intact over all this period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in answer to the question, the Planning Commission meeting is on the 17th, and the Board of Supervisors is 2 weeks later. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. Let me double check before I say that. Yeah, Planning Commission on March 17th, and Board of Supervisors actually is April 13th. So.
Oh, okay. So.
Yeah, I think they gave a little bit of extra time in case we needed to go back to Planning Commission before we went to the board.
That's a good idea.
Makes sense. So if we give a letter, it would have to be done pretty quickly to make it before the Planning Commission, but you could do a letter for the Board of Supervisors.
I think the letter could be written that quickly, Tammy. It's not that difficult.
If we vote tonight, if we vote tonight to instruct Cheryl and Tammy to work on a letter, and if you have time in the next few days, then that could happen.
Okay.
Yeah, so if the commission, we've done this in the past where the commission has just sort of delegated and made its general issues and scope of support known, and then people hammer that out in details in terms of an actual letter, and we would circulate that prior to sending it, not for a formal vote, but just to show you what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, this is Esther. Can we get that motion restated? Are we doing an amendment, or what's going on here?
Okay, good question, Esther.
Jordan made a suggestion, but does it need to be in the motion?
We can incorporate it into the motion. Tammy, are you amenable to amending your motion to take into consideration the two issues that we just brought up, that Jordan mentioned, and then just that the letter be drafted in time for the Planning Commission?
Right. So, so we wanted to recommend that against subdivision of the property, strongly advocate that the property not be subdivided.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then our support be indicated in the form of a letter and representation to the both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors meetings.
And maybe just to add to that, Timmy, maybe we could say that we recommend that it not be subdivided, and that the board consider using whatever the citation is to the act that Gretchen referred to.
Oh, that it be rezoned so that it can't be subdivided.
Well, that would be the best. I don't know that we could say that, but as I understood it, that the board has the power, what Gretchen was saying, to prohibit subdivision. So
I got you.
We would urge that the board exercise its ability to prohibit subdivision.
Yeah, so we'll cite SB 1459. We'll look at that language, Jordan.
Great.
Excellent. Yes, I think we could do that.
Great.
Assuming the governor signs it. I think it's on his desk.
Yes.
Is there a second for the amended motion? Do we have to do that? Or is it okay with Jordan second, it still holds? Or Esther, you can advise on that.
Actually, you do vote on the amendment and then vote on the motion with the amendment in it.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Do we have a second on the amendment?
It's Bob Beach. I'll second that.
Thank you, Bob. And then I guess now, is there any further discussion on the motion overall?
On the amendment.
On the amendment, sorry. Okay, hearing none. I guess I can call the vote on the motion as amended.
Yeah, on the amendment.
Oh, we vote separately?
Yes.
I'm glad that's just
all in one vote. Sorry. Okay, there's any further discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to amend Tammy's initial motion so that we will incorporate the language of SB 1459 and state our opposition to subdivision of the property, and that we will do so with a letter that will be composed prior to the meeting of the Planning Commission. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right, the motion passes unanimously. The amendment of the motion passes. Now on to the actual motion, which was to support the creation of a historic, the staff's position to create a historic overlay district for Wellington at Riverfront. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
With
I'm sorry?
with the amendment
with the
stated.
amendment.
With the as amended, as we just voted on the amendment.
Well, we have to go on and say what it is.
Restate the amendment, what I just said?
Yes, yes. Because the script has to read the whole motion with the amendment in.
So Tammy, do you think you can do that whole thing?
I don't know. I was gonna say, do we?
I can do it. Yeah.
You got it?
I think I can. So
Okay.
the entire motion would be that Tammy has moved that we support the creation of the historic overlay district for Wellington and River Farm, support the staff report on that, and that we specifically state our opposition to subdivision and encourage the board to use powers that we anticipate it will have exercised under SB 1459, and that we will do so in the form of a written letter to the Planning Commission and to the Board of Supervisors prior to their meeting.
Good.
Well said.
Call for the vote.
Okay, and so within that was seconded. Jordan, does that second still count, Esther?
Yes.
All right, so just for the record, just for our person who's keeping these minutes, that is seconded by Jordan. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. The oppositions or abstentions? Okay, hearing none, the motion passes. All right, thank you, everybody.
Well done. Next time I will draft a motion before the meeting.
Well, you know,
Lesson learned.
Write it down, Tammy.
Write it down before the meeting.
You know, that amendment that George added was actually really useful. So,
Yeah.
you know, and until Gretchen described what the legislation was, I didn't know what, you know, I had heard in the course of the meeting last night references to some, you know, legislation that Senator Serval had come up with, but I didn't know what it was. And that sounds like an amazing tool in the historic preservation kit. You know.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Breaking news.
All right. All right. Thank you. And our next item on unfinished business is Richmond Highway bus rapid transit system. And what's happened at this point is that there has been a formal official notification from, it's actually from the Federal Transit Authority, and or transit, whatever the A stands for, and VDOT, sorry, Fairfax County Department of Transportation, with regard to any effects that the bus rapid transit system is going to have on historic properties. So they have defined, I think there's 9 historic properties in this corridor that would potentially be affected, and they have found either no effects on those properties or adverse effects. There was a miscommunication, and staff once again did an amazing job of doing things on the fly. Nicole specifically, thank you, did a great job of in one day compiling a response to this official finding. And in that response, and Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, staff questioned the finding of no adverse effects for Mount Vernon High School and for the Fairhaven homes. They questioned that whether or not a designation of contributing versus non-contributing structures could be made within Gum Springs. So the finding was that there were only non-contributing buildings or structures that would have been affected in Gum Springs, and staff is questioning that there isn't sufficient information to determine what is or is not contributing to Gum Springs Historic Overlay District. A historic potential historic district for Gum Springs at this time. And that further research and outreach with the community is necessary before making those determinations. And staff also continue to contend that the Groveton School building should be defined as eligible for the National Register and regarded as a historic structure that might be affected by the rapid transit system. So it now falls, we can also as consulting party make a response to this finding. And I think, Jordan, maybe you can take it at this point in terms of what our next steps might be and what we need from the commission tonight.
Well, so they've kind of jumbled a lot of different things in one time. Looking at the 106 process, they have not completed the identification and evaluation, or they may think they have, but it's raised questions as to significance. It's much like the Soapstone, only Soapstone just had one district. They've got a bunch of properties. So I think that the first thing we say to them is before we can really determine effect, we have to know what we have, what properties do we have to look at, what that meet the criteria of being a historic property. So at this point, and having had some dealings now with Fairfax County DOT, what I would do is start bringing in other folks. I don't know where the state is on this, but I would certainly bring in the advisory council if for some reason they put their back up and said, look, no, we've determined that this property is not eligible. We're a consulting party. Let's just take Groveton School building. Then I would send a letter to the advisory council saying that we think that this ought to be determined by the keeper of the National Register. I mean, you can't get a no adverse effect here, insufficient identification and evaluation there. It's just a lot of different issues that we should take sequentially. And the first thing is you've got a potential TCP, a traditional cultural property with Gum Springs. You've got potential eligible properties with the Groveton School and maybe others. And I think that that we need to certainly point that out before we can go any further into this process. This is one undertaking, one project, unless they want to split this into a bunch of other projects, which I'm sure they don't want to do. That would be segmentation, and they couldn't, and that would not be allowed. That would not be appropriate. So that's what I would think, that we ought to establish the status of a number of properties, probably more than the Groveton and Gum Springs. There's probably others that might need to be looked at.
Anybody else? Sing out. If you have any other comment, anybody else has any other comment?
This is Tammy. There was another property that we had commented on in our last go round, which was the Wells Fargo Bank that is a replica of Mount Vernon. And what particularly struck me about the FTA response was that in our last comments, we pointed out, they had talked about that the building lacked integrity and that it, and that it didn't have architectural value. It wouldn't meet National Historic Register. And so we pointed out to them that it did have integrity. Staff sent pictures to show that that was true. And then we had expert opinion from someone who has written a book about Mount Vernon replicas, who said it was a very complete example. And they came back and said, FTA came back and said that they didn't find a reason to reevaluate since the 2016 analysis. And I thought, we brought some pretty good evidence there. And I was surprised that they were unwilling to reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
So that raised a red flag for me.
Yeah. I mean, let's not jump immediately to mitigation and adverse effect and what we do about that. Let's do the necessary identification, make sure we've got the scope of that identification properly, measure the area of potential effect, and then let's get some professional determination as to whether they are or are not eligible. And the only person in the dispositive disposition of that is from the keeper. The keeper will decide. I usually advise clients to say properties are eligible because more often than not, the keeper will say that they are. But who knows? In every case, it's different, obviously. Can't bank on that. But that's what I would do. I would try and stop this juggernaut and send them back and have them do additional work to answer the questions that we have. There are questions. There's no, and if they still go ahead, then you write to the council, and the council can write to Federal Transit Administration and say, we'd like you to go to the keeper. And it gets messy. Typically say no, because when all is said and done, the advisory council is just an advisory agency. They can't mandate a solution, but we can delay this for a while. And we can try and get some clarity as to what resources we're dealing with.
So we owe comments on this document by March 15th. So how do we go about responding and then I guess questioning the keeper on this, sending it forward there?
Well, I think a letter needs to be drafted. I don't know that, because there's another letter that I'm going to propose we do for Soapstone, and I don't know that I have the time to do both. I don't know. Actually, I don't know that I understand this process well enough. I need to kind of looked at it occasionally, but not really pull back the various levels, isolated the issues, and kind of tried to get some coherence out of what's going on. But if, as I said, the first step would be we question the determination of non-eligibility, if you will. And if we send that to the DOT, the Secretary of Transportation, sits on the council, that would be important. That's what we did with Soapstone. there we were lucky enough to get the SHPO to join in that. I don't know what the position of the SHPO is. Does anyone know? Has anyone talked to Mark Holma about this? And do we know where he's coming from?
Is that the
That's the DHR, the
DHR.
that does the 106 for Virginia. Yeah.
I just want to jump in. I can't speak to SHPO's position, and perhaps Nicole has had a conversation with them, but I do want to point out that the federal agency is the Transit Authority.
Yeah.
And not transportation.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the highway department because it's a bus rapid transit system, so it
Right.
like trains.
Yeah. So does anybody know, Denise or Nicole, do you know where the SHPO is on this?
I believe, I don't know their response to the latest submission. I believe that part of the Gum Springs is that they agreed to assume that it was eligible. I don't know. I also believe that they did say that they agreed with what they determined as contributing and non-contributing at Gum Springs at the last submission. But I don't know on this latest one where they stand. We haven't received that, or if we have, it has not made it to me yet.
Yeah. Look, if what I'm hearing is that there are questions as to what is eligible, what are historic properties in this undertaking, then that's where I would start. I wouldn't add to the confusion by trying to deal with this no adverse effect here and a no effect there and adverse effect here. I think the first step is in this one project, and that's the way the regs read. The first thing you do is you identify and evaluate. And in that that's where we have now raised some questions as to the proper evaluation. That was the exact question, issue that was raised with Soapstone. And we were able to get a second report, which turned things completely around 180 degrees. So I think that's the letter that needs to be written, and a listing of these properties, why we feel that they are eligible, why we feel they meet the criteria, number one, and number two, that they've got integrity, feeling, association, setting, all of that. So that's what I would do. That I think is the next step. That's what I would move, that a letter be written to the Federal Transit Authority and letting them know, because they are the responsible body, they're the federal agency, that the commission questions the non-eligibility of the following properties, and then we can go through them and indicate why we're raising those questions. Does that sound reasonable?
It sounds reasonable to me. Cheryl, are you trying to say something?
I did this again. I did this last night. Yes, staff kind of did both in their response. They questioned the eligibility. They questioned the continued non-inclusion. That they questioned the dismissal of Groveton.
Right.
And they didn't. Nicole, there had been an earlier questioning of Wells Fargo. I noticed that dropped out, and I don't know if that wasn't because of determination by DHR or anybody else that it wasn't eligible, or.
Yeah, it was one of those ones that was kind of on the border for me, and so I think the integrity, like you mentioned, is still there, but I'm not sure the significance for the National Register. I definitely could see something on the local or state, but I understand, the opposite view of that too.
Sure, no, and that's fine. I was just curious if there was something very concrete and formidable, that had occurred that altered the position on that, or if it was, something like this, which is a little bit more arguable one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, local significance is sufficient for eligibility, so. Doesn't have to be of national significance.
Any other comments from other members of the commission about this? I know that there are a number of other people from Easton District and from Lee District Oh, Lynn, you having trouble with the quality of the audio?
I can't mute.
We can hear you now, Lynn. It looks like you're. There you go.
Oh, yeah. It keeps me.
I can't unmute.
Looks like you might be having some bandwidth problems.
Can everyone be reminded to turn off their mic if they're not speaking?
Yeah, that would be good.
Then you may want to turn off your camera. Sometimes that solves the bandwidth problem and you're able to still speak.
Also, for the record, want to note that David Meyer has now joined us.
Cheryl.
And yeah, sure.
Yeah. Denise and Nicole, what are you feel comfortable venturing a response to what I think I think we ought to go? Do you have your own opinion on this?
I can let Nicole answer, but I mean, I'm just generally, I think that you are within your rights to write a response letter and you can have your opinion and you can lay out that argument, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very reasonable to me.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I agree. I think, whatever is of issue to your group, I think is, that's 106, right? Like make sure that you're explaining your reasons and why. And, obviously maybe slightly different than ours, but they're all important and the federal agency should hear them.
Yeah.
I thought that the staff's questions about adverse effects on finding no adverse effects on Mount Vernon High School and Fairhaven were very well taken.
Yeah.
and so I would certainly also want to support that. I think we can take the argument that you're describing and then add that as well.
Yeah, when my feeling on identification is that that needs to be a very objective determination, and you don't want to get into the bind where you're saying things are not eligible because you know that it will complicate. I mean, you being the agency, it'll complicate your undertaking.
Right.
I've seen that happen a lot. When I teach this course, I urge students not to do that. And I think that's what we've got right now. They shouldn't be talking adverse effect, no adverse effect, or no effect until they've adequately identified all of the eligible, all of the historic properties, eligible and registered properties in the area of potential effect. And I don't think they've done that. So I think that's the first step.
Well, I mean, they certainly have been doing this. I mean, they've been doing that. They've been undertaking it for quite a while now.
Right.
It's that we're disagreeing with.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Anne, I know you've been involved in this process more than I have.
Well, I just think Tammy's going to be real busy in the next 12 days. Thank you, Tammy, on all our behalf, and Cheryl and Jordan, because it just, it's just another great letter that's going to come out from us with this.
Yeah, another letter.
Another letter.
So
Tammy,
is that a motion, Anne? Are you making a motion that we write a letter?
I think that's what we want to respond within the time period, right? And it's the 15th of March.
Yes, we do.
So, yes, I would like to make a motion that we write a letter in time for the as a consulting party on the Richmond Highway bus rapid transit, and cover
this multitude of issues that we've been discussing today. And it's the same kind of motion where we're kind of delegating to a small group of you to speak for us in expressing these concerns. And you know what they are, and we don't have to put them specifically in a motion.
And I second it.
All right, any discussion of that motion? It's okay to say you think that's a really bad idea. Don't worry.
It sounds like a good idea, but let's just have the motion clear enough for the minutes. That the president signed a letter to be sent to, what was it, the Transit Authority?
The Federal Transit Authority, with raising questions as to the National Register eligibility of a number of potential historic properties, and that the Federal Transit Authority be urged to, if necessary, take these questions to the keeper of the National Register for a final, decision as to whether or not they meet the National Register criteria, 36 CFR Part 60. I'm happy, Tammy, to work with you on that, obviously.
Excellent. That would be great. And Cheryl's input would be wonderful also.
Yeah.
I think we can draft something, since you are working on something else as well, Jordan. So we can draft something, and you can add the right the right legislation
and appropriate citations. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. So that was a clarification. I'm not going to call it an amendment.
No. He just stated it. So.
And any other discussion of that motion? Ann? Ann, you're muted.
Still muted.
She's working on it, it looks like.
Trying to unmute. Okay. This is a very obvious question, I guess, and maybe a very obvious answer to my question. But how are these letters being transmitted to where they need to go to? So are we emailing them? Are we texting them? I mean, how's that going to happen?
That's a really good question. Since they have communicated with us via email, that is how we are communicating. Yeah, so it's a drafted letter. It's printed up on letterhead, but it's attached to an email.
Okay, thank you.
No, that's a good question. I've wondered myself whether or not it actually had to have a stamp on it in order to be official.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
So did we vote on that?
Not yet.
Oh.
So yeah, no, I assume that there's generally discussion, and then once we make sure that everybody's had their say, we can then vote.
Have we had a second yet?
Yes.
Jordan.
Joe actually seconded. So it's actually Tammy. All right. Further discussion. Hearing none, should we go ahead and take a vote? All them in favor, say aye.
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 Any abstentions or objections? Hearing none, motion passes. All right. Thank you so much for. Okay. Somebody.
Whatever that is.
Here's someone's plumbing.
Is there someone trying to speak? Is that what that background noise is?
I don't know.
Kind of sounds a little.
I just muted everybody to get rid of the background noise.
Thank you.
It's gone.
Thank you. That worked. All right. Next up, Jordan, you guys keep talking. Soapstone.
Yeah, so Soapstone. So the finally the FHWA made a determination of adverse effect. How could they do otherwise? Because they're going to demolish one of the buildings and they're going to certainly have an effect on the district. So that determination was sent to the state. Been talking to Mark about that. They apparently they just signed it. Yes, they concur. And a consultation, capital C, meeting is set for the end of March. Now, as has happened with this case, even though I've been to every single meeting on this project, I never get an email from FHWA, Virginia DOT, or Fairfax. Fine, that's okay. I get lots of emails from other people. But I would like to represent the commission at the 106 consultation. They're saying that only one member of everybody, every organization or department, agency, commission is allowed to attend. When I look at the distribution list, and maybe Denise, Nicole, Cheryl, you can help me on this. It looks to me as though there's several times that the same email is printed. The 4J Pratt or whatever it is, Frigo Pratt. There are a number of them that show up twice. Now, I don't know. I assume that might mean that there are 2 or 3 people coming from other places, but we are limited to 1. Or maybe I'm reading that wrong. It could be that I'm just not understanding that. So if the other groups are sending more than 1 person, I think we should be allowed to too. And I'd like to attend. And I think that Cheryl, you probably would want to, as the chair, you should attend as well. Okay, so that is one issue that we need to address quickly. The other is, and we don't have a lot of time. March 30th is when this consultation is.
It's the 23rd.
What's that?
I think it's March 23rd.
March 23rd.
I think it's a March, unless I'm getting my meetings mixed up. Denise, do you know offhand?
Whoops.
Sorry, I have to mute myself. All right, let me check my staff report real quick. March 30th.
Yeah, okay.
March 30th from 5:30 to 7.
Right.
Just confused. Thank you.
So if they push back and say no, and Denise, do you know now that you're off mute, is that the way you read that distribution list to the email talking about the consultation, that there are 2 or 3 emails, the same email? I mean, are they sending it, are they just duplicating it for another reason, or are 2 or 3 people in other organizations like the developer, the local developer, are 2 or 3 people being notified of this?
So I don't have the email in front of me, Jordan. I apologize. I just pulled facts from it to give my staff report.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. If 2 or more of you are gathered, it becomes a public meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So I caution you about appointing more than 2 people to attend this meeting.
Okay. So
to go through all sorts of gyrations. Yeah.
Okay, because they mentioned just 1 person attending. So what's your advice there? Do we just can we send 2 anyway, or do we just send 1?
How do you be polite about this? I feel like you have agency here, right?
Yeah. Right. Okay, so do I need?
I mean, I'm certainly happy to let you go, Jordan. That's you are the person who can best speak for us.
Yeah.
And so I can certainly respond to them that you will be our representative. It may be that they only want one person speaking, but the others are happy or are allowed to sort of sit in the background and listen.
Okay, so one letter that we need to write immediately that we can write, Cheryl, is a letter back to them saying, thank you very much for your email, termination of adverse effect. I can put that together for you, and just say that the commission has decided, and tell me if you need to take a vote on this. I think we need to take a vote, but the commission decided to have Commissioner Tannenbaum represent the commission at the consultation on the adverse effect, blah, 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 put it all together. In addition, I will be attending as chair of the commission, but Commissioner Tannenbaum will speak for the commission. Do we need a motion on that?
No, I think our chair can appoint.
Okay, good. So you appointed. So I've appointed Jordan. I've appointed Commissioner Tannenbaum to be our speaker, and I'll put that together for you and send you a draft, and we'll send that off real quick. So moving along, I should not write too many memos at 11 o'clock at night because there were some typos and whatnot. But section 800.6 of 36 CFR Part 800, which Cheryl researched, Cheryl found and read, which is really the Bible here, says resolution of adverse effect in pertinent part, the SHPO, THPO, that's State Preservation Officer, Tribal Preservation Officer, and an Indian tribe or Native Hawaiian organization or any other consulting party may at any time independently request the council is the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, to participate in the consultation. That is this is kind of a Hail Mary pass at this point, but the requirements when an agency makes the finding of adverse effect, there are a number of requirements. Number one, the agency has to notify the Advisory Council that they're making a finding of adverse effect. They've done that in a printed form, looks like that the council has put together. So they've done that. Number two, the agency says, do they want the council to participate? And ordinarily, in a case like this, the council would not participate. There's also documentation that comes along with this, and they did fill out a number of pages on that. Plus, they would probably use the 4F, which went into much more detail on the alternatives. But we, as a consulting party, can request the council to participate, and nobody else, I'm sure, is going to do that. Now, I can put together that letter, and I'm basing this on a number of factors. Number one, and I really wish, and I'm going to keep talking to Mark Homa, because the SHPO is so important. We wouldn't be where we are now. We would be, because it would have been determined eligible, but having the state weighed in made it a lot easier for us to get to this point. If Mark Homa feels that the two alternatives that would avoid the demolition of that building, one of the buildings in the Association Drive Historic District, that they are in fact feasible and prudent, and the state is willing to support that, then we have a very good chance, I think, of changing the direction in which this thing is headed. And I don't know that that's the case. I really don't know. Maybe Denise and Nicole, thank you, Nicole, no. But the reason why this property, the Association Drive was determined eligible on criterion A. They make another statement that something to the effect of, that only says here that the mitigation concepts must relate to mitigating adverse effects to community planning and development. Now, what they're doing is saying that's one of the contributing factors that made this a eligible property, and that's the only thing they're going to talk about, mitigating that. And I disagree with that. I definitely disagree with that. Criterion A is association with events that have made significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history and culture. That is criterion A. It's very broad, and I don't feel that anyone needs to feel limited to just that community planning and development. And I'm not even sure how you do that. But but anyway, that was the other reason why this is so important. It meets also not only the National Register criteria, but criteria consideration G, which is for properties that are less than 50 years old. And to do that, the property has to be of exceptional significance. That was what the API building was. It was exceptional significance, probably a landmark, and we lost it. This property is coming in under that same criterion consideration. And therefore, I think it's worth the effort to try to get a different result. And one way to do that, if we can get the council in, at that point, I drop out of this thing for sure. And already I'm probably in it a little deeper than I should be. But the council involvement is serious, is important. And the other piece is there in fact, are either of these alternatives likely, are they in fact feasible and prudent? That the FHWA says no. I'm not so sure, and I don't trust a lot of what's gone on because initially they didn't determine this property to be eligible. Their first report was terrible, and I don't think they've ever changed their mind on this. They just wanted to, they want to go ahead as they've wanted to go ahead since the get-go. Nothing has really deviated from that. The mitigation, I talked to John Burns about this, and John said, look, Jordan, I'm worried because I want to make sure we get some records of this because I think it's probably going to come down and I don't want to lose that. Well, you won't lose that. I mean, that's the mitigation, the bottom line mitigation that's going to, and you're not going to lose it if you question things. And we're not going to be punished by saying, okay, you don't get any documentation because you've been a bad commission, and you've objected to what we're doing, and you're going to get punished. No, that's where the FHWA, more importantly, Fairfax DOT and Virginia DOT think that they're headed. That's really the mitigation that they're prepared to do. I want to stop the rush to mitigation and see if there is a way to, if not totally avoid, then minimize. And minimization here would be the saving the demolition of that one property that's got to come down. Keep in mind too that once this thing is built, that whole area will go. It will just go because you've got the developers lined up. They've been, chomping at the bit ever since this thing was put on the table, and they'll start to subdivide, and the buildings will go. So, what I would like to do, and I will need the commission's, I do need a motion on this, I think, or maybe not. Maybe Cheryl can just appoint me to do this. I'd like to write a letter on behalf of the commission to the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, requesting their involvement in this adverse effect finding, in this undertaking, and laying out some of the reasons that I've just given to you to why I think that is important, and why this resource is important, and why I think they need to take a role in this. Again, they may just say, okay, thanks, but we're really not interested. We asked around and called up Mark Homa. We wouldn't say that, but they're undoubtedly going to talk to the SHPO. And if they say, look, I don't really, we were convinced, they made a good case. I don't think this is going anywhere. It's not one I want to take. Politically, it's kind of a loser. All right, well, we would have tried. As I said, this is the Hail Mary pass. But the regs do provide for us to request the council to come in and look at this. And I think that's where we ought to go. And I welcome feedback and I welcome pushback. But that letter we need to send off as soon as possible because the clock is ticking.
So, Jordan, would that essentially then potentially negate your attending, or would it stop that March 7th meeting?
No, I've checked with the legal counsel at the advisory council. It's only when the council is involved that I have to step away.
Right.
So there's no conflict of interest unless the council is involved.
So would writing to the council be a conflict of interest, Jordan?
I'm not going to sign the letter. Cheryl would. I'll draft the letter. Cheryl sends it, but I don't think whether or not they will connect me with that. They might, but I don't see a problem. Nothing that I've done. I've basically done that all through this case, right? I've written letters to the FHWA I've copied the council. Somebody probably has read them. So nobody has said to me, you're jeopardizing, you're crossing the line. But I do cross the line if the council gets involved, obviously.
Okay.
So, George, if the council's involved, they don't say, would they say, no, not thinking about you for a moment, but just thinking about what the council could do.
Yeah.
If they say, oh yeah, we'll like to look at this. What's that do for going forward? Does it stop? Does it stall? Does it put off the March 30th meeting?
Yeah, it could. And the reason why it's important to get this letter out is because the council, I don't know, Denise, if you have that letter in front of you, if you remember what the date is, but the council has 15 days to make a decision as to whether or not they want to get involved. And I think they have 15 days is what they've got. They probably could request another 15. And I want to try to get to them before they say, no, we don't want to be involved. So that obviously I'm not going to call them up and say, what are you guys doing about this? I could, I suppose, but yeah, I think I might actually, because if they've already made a decision, then it'll be moot. So I've got to do that. I think I'll find out who's dealing with that and just say, could you tell me, is this thing still viable? Is this thing still an open issue? Yeah.
For tonight, you've got to preserve your ability to act depending on what you find out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So you're looking for this motion. Well, you're looking to discuss at this moment.
Yeah.
Motion for us to request that the advisory council get involved in this adverse effect finding.
Right. If they do, you've got to know that if they do, given the sensitivity of this project, the polarization, perhaps, it is something that might, there might be some blowback from various sectors. There's no question.
Our job along the way is to just send whatever correspondence we're doing like this to the supervisors so they're aware of it.
Yeah, to Walter Alcarn and to Supervisor McKay, Chairman McKay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
And we have notified them that we were going to participate in this process already, but we have not. This would be another additional step to request the council's involvement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, if Mark Homa if the state folds on this, then the chances are even, they're more remote. I think we should still request the comments that the council get involved, but it is much more remote. That they are one of the signatory parties. We are not. In terms of we're an invited party, we can sign this thing or not sign it. Doesn't really matter. But the state is important, very important.
Right.
So if you can delegate that to me without a motion, then I'm happy to start writing and start investigating a little bit as to where this thing is in the council pipeline.
I think a motion is safer, and I would like, golly, I don't think I could make that motion very well. What he said.
So what Ann was saying is that she moves that.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah. Well, how about that the commission prepare, we'll keep my name out of it, that the commission prepare a letter to the Advisory Council, United States Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, requesting that in accordance with section 800.6 A1II, that the Advisory Council participate in the consultation on the Soapstone connector, which will have an adverse effect on the Association Historic District of property eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. How's that sound?
That sounds darn good.
Barbara Nape, as the Restonian here, will certainly second it.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you for that, Barbara. I appreciate actually that it isn't just a conversation between Ann, Jordan, and I. So please, anybody else who wishes to comment. And so we have a second from Barbara. Any discussion?
I was gonna say, I felt like we had a pretty good discussion of it beforehand with all of just keeping track of the moving parts with the SHPO and, their stance on it. I feel pretty comfortable with that.
We've come a long way, and I think we follow it all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Anybody else have any comments to add? Oh, thank you,
Esther. I appreciate your expertise and your willingness to do this, because sometimes I don't really know what we're talking about, but I trust you.
Well, I hope you don't regret those words, Esther. But thank you for that vote of confidence.
Okay.
So we're basically bringing another party into the conversation about Soapstone. It's sort of going off. It's like we're siblings having an argument, and we're running off to go call mom and dad to get involved in it.
Yeah, and keep in mind, that's going to be tough because mom and dad really want to stay out of this one. That's why they developed this process. And before, they were much more, in the earlier days of these regulations, they were much more involved than they are now. And many agreements only involve two parties, don't even involve the council. They just file the thing. But there is that provision. That's correct. Yep.
I know my mom always made us solve our own fights. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think it's a good thing to try.
Yep.
I think so. Especially when the stakes are what they are. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Any other discussion? Any other comments, questions, objections, better ideas? Is that just a random noise? I can't see everybody, and so raising your hand, I can't see you, so just go ahead and shout out.
I think we're ready.
All right.
Ready to vote.
All right, so let's call a vote. All those in favor of the motion as stated, to have to draft a letter to involve the advisor, to ask to request for involvement of the council in the Soapstone connector process. Then
Aye.
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 any objections or abstentions? All right, hearing none, motion passes. All right, moving along here. we might get done. New business. Thank you very much, Jordan, for lending your expertise and letter writing powers. New business. We have to hire a clerk, and you have a written statement from the executive committee with regard to our meeting of February 17th. Basically, we're proposing to hire a new clerk at the rate of $450 a month plus FICA. And that will be an annual cost to the commission of $5,000. Misplaced my reading glasses. $5,815.10 a year, assuming I did my math correctly. We're also proposing that that basically we advertise this by word of mouth. we're actually able to be that flexible with this. And so an email to within the Department of Planning and Development. Also, commissioners would be welcome, invited to send. I will send out a job description by tomorrow morning, and then you can forward that on to whoever you think might be interested in the position. And Lynn has signed off, but honestly, I really did discuss this with her beforehand. I'm not just volunteering her out of thin air. So Lynn has volunteered to be the person to interview and to review resumes and conduct interviews. I believe she was also going to ask another person to help her with that. Esther, did she ask you? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
not yet.
Okay. Well, you know, you might want to duck her calls or whatever. She did mention potentially asking you. As Denise has mentioned, whenever three of us gather together, we form a public meeting. There actually are exceptions, by the way. We can gather socially and not be a public meeting. And I think three of us could attend like a political meeting or some other kind of meeting, and it would not qualify as a public meeting. But certainly in this context, three of us gathering would be a public meeting. So we're going to keep this to just a two-person sort of task force to be able to conduct these interviews. Otherwise, we'll have to go to the absurdity of publishing our interviews on the web 3 days in advance. We'd have to have staff time involved in doing that. And all of that would then just go into closed session because that can't be it's a personnel matter and it can't be public. So that would just be silly. So we're going to do this with a two-person task force. Or at least that's what the committee is recommending. Well, that's what I'm suggesting in addition. And I think that basically covers it. What we're seeking is the commission is a motion from someone on the commission to support hiring someone at the specified recommended amount of $450 a month plus FICA. The task force I can chair.
Question.
Sure.
Cheryl,
yep.
This is Esther. You quoted the monthly rate. I think the wording needs to be the month that the minutes are done. It has to connect with the minutes in particular, because the person is not going to be working each month for a yearly rate. You see what I'm saying? It's only during the month that they work and produce those minutes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't making, I can't make a motion, Esther. I wasn't making a motion.
Okay, but the explanation, you might put the wording out there. I think it needs to be clarified that the month that they produce the minutes. Or someone else can help with that wording.
You're saying in the advertising?
Yes, in the advertising and the interview and everything.
Yeah.
It's
very
not
clear. Yeah, if
right.
you don't produce the minutes, you don't get paid.
Right.
Okay, yes. Yes, that's a good suggestion, Esther. We'll clarify that.
Well, can I make a motion then? I would like to make a motion that that we approve this different rate, that we approve that we find a new clerk at this different rate of $450 a month plus FICA for $450 a month. If I pick up Esther's language, $450 a month for minute written plus FICA. And the reason Cheryl put the annual cost is just so we can see it for our budget. But you're right, they don't get that for the whole year unless they produce the minutes for the whole year. So so that's all it is. It's those two pieces to this motion, that a new clerk be hired and that the rate offered be $450 plus FICA for a set of monthly minutes.
Second.
I have a question, Mary Lipsy.
Go ahead.
Is it in the job description or does it need to be connected to their salary that recording equipment is provided?
We can, I don't know that, yeah, we can add that to the job description. It isn't presently in it, but we can add it.
I don't know where it should be, but I'm just, for someone who's thinking about this job, we've got to be able to give them a method to do this.
Do we have the recording equipment back from Winifred?
Not to my knowledge.
Or that be?
I think we also have to include the requirement of attendance at our meeting.
Good point.
I believe that the job description does specify the attendance at the meeting. I'm sorry I didn't have it. I didn't send it out earlier today.
And we're gonna, and you're encouraging us to share this with friends and kids of friends and any groups that where we think there might, and then there'll be some actual advertising. Or really is more word of mouth.
Yeah, it would basically just be by word of mouth, because we're not necessarily engaging or participating in the formal hiring process that the county uses.
So would the person apply to Lynn to the website? How would we handle this?
I think we should probably have them send an email to me, and then I can forward it to Lynn, or I can I can specify Lynn in my emails, and people can send resumes that way. And so, and then Lynn can proceed from there.
I'm concerned that this limits it to only current county employees, unless we all have a bunch of willing friends.
I was going to say, I have a friend who, she's a graduate student in the history department at George Mason, and I can ask her to get it to somebody there.
Yeah,
I
we
don't know
could.
if that's helpful.
Actually, that's a good suggestion, Tammy. I'm sorry, I forgot. There is a, it's called Handshake. There is a sort of a bulletin board at George Mason University that we could make use of. We do actually have an applicant already for this position as well. I mean, just somebody who sent a resume some months ago. But we can use the George Mason Handshake process with that.
That sounds perfect. And if Nova has an equivalent possibility as well, that would be great.
I think both of those are fine.
I can check if Nova has it as well.
You get with a student, you might get shorter term commitment. Just be one of those things about it.
Well, let's try and see. You do not want to get into the formal county process. You want to do this as quickly as you can, and that's just my thoughts on it.
Is this the sort of thing that can be also, we don't intend to do anything formal, but is this the sort of thing, Denise, that can be shared informally at your level?
I think, if I remember correctly, there was some intention of distributing it to Department of Planning and Development.
And that's okay.
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Good. Because that would be, those will be super if they're anything like the ones we know already.
Do we need a motion? We're just gonna, yes, we have the motion. Do we have a second?
And the
I
second,
second.
Any
This
more
is Esther.
questions?
Yeah, that's it.
Then Barbara calls the question so we can vote.
All right, Barbara is calling the question. All right, so let's, all those in favor of going forward to hire a clerk at $450 a month for producing minutes?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or opposition or opposing votes? Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, thank you. All right. Now, let us go, and I'm sorry, I know it's getting late, but Liz, what do you have to say to us in terms of your staff report? And so what you can do is just talk about what you think is, we do have your staff report printed, so you can just cherry pick what you think is most interesting or that you most want to talk about.
Hang on 1 second, I've got to get myself to it.
Sure.
I had it pulled up on my screen and then I went and looked for something else and
Uh-oh.
that was, that's my limitation. I don't want to, a lot of the things that, that I mentioned in my staff report are things that, that I have mentioned before. We have completed our advertisement and have conducted the interviews for the HRS3 position. Right now, that's going through review elsewhere in the Park Authority, and I am hoping that by the time that we attend the History Commission meeting next month, that we will be able to announce our new staff person for that. So that's a good thing. I've been doing a number of the projects that have been discussed tonight. The Historic Overlay District, BRT, and others I have been participating in, making comments upon, and things like that. From last month, I want to again thank the History Commission for their donation. That's going through the works right now, and assuming that they've received the motion, the money will be at that, be transferred. So I sincerely appreciate that. And I would say at this point, just so not to belabor it, one thing I will say is, and Sally would probably say this as well, is this coming weekend, FOFA, Fairfax Archaeology and Gunston Hall are sponsoring a symposium. It's virtual. And from what I understand, there are issues with the website right now, but I would encourage anybody who might be interested. I can share the information if people don't already have it.
Actually, thank you for mentioning that, Liz, because I did try to sign up for it the other day and was told that it was sold out on the website. That's what it appears.
I have put in, someone else told me that they were having issues accessing it. And so I wrote to John Mullen, who's the president of our Friends group, and to Lacey at Gunston Hall, and said, could you please update us on the status of this? So I can let folks know tomorrow about that.
I did get to register, but it was very difficult. And today when I went to check and see, and you click someplace to find details of the program, and I couldn't get in there. So whatever the issue is, it's still around.
Okay, well, I will, like I said earlier this evening, because somebody else had texted me that they had difficulty, and like I said, I reached out to John Mullen and Lacey from Gunston Hall, Lacey Valavia. And anyway, so hopefully that'll be resolved tomorrow.
I would like to just say that, as Liz mentioned, the money for our donation is actually in progress. But over the last couple of years, I have often struggled with the definition of how I'm handling money. And I submitted originally a grant request. Grants have a whole different process than donations.
Oh, gee.
And because the document said grant, you know, I use the terminology grant. Anyway, we've resolved that and we've made a donation.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Barbara.
your input. I realize it was very, because I thank you, I thank Denise and others, but it was very complicated, and it was sort of like, all I can think of is like ping pong or doubles tennis or whatever, because things were fast and furious going back and forth, trying to get this resolved. So I appreciate everybody's efforts on our behalf.
It's in process. It is definitely moving forward at this point.
And if anybody has any questions about anything else on my report, I'm more than glad to elaborate.
Can I ask a question? Why are we dredging Lake Akkatink?
Apparently there.
Mary can contribute. It's about 18 inches deep. I mean, you can almost walk across Lake Akkatink.
Yeah, and apparently it's a lot of what needs to be dredged is fairly nasty.
Yeah, and it's a huge dumping ground from everything above us, and then it gets caught up at the dam. And so if the dam stops it, and people had suggested that maybe we take down the dam, and I said to Supervisor Stork, are you ready? Because if the dam doesn't catch it, he's next to get it. So
I believe it's also
because we think there's something under there.
I believe it's part of the regional stormwater management system for the Chesapeake Bay Protection Area.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And
That's right.
I've lived in Ravensworth now for about over 30 years, and it's the third time it's been dredged.
Okay.
And so, and that's what people are asking about, and it's just incredible. If you come there after a rainstorm, it doesn't even have to be a hard one. You'll see everything that's come down and hit the marina and hit the dam.
Right.
Sue has placed in the chat a link to the Public Works Stormwater Lake Akkatink Dredging website.
Yeah.
If you want further information about that.
It's a perennial problem there. I mean, we were dredging when, believe it or not, when I had natural resources, which is a long time ago, they were having to deal with it. And yeah, it's a perennial problem. So
Well, dredging of these water estuaries is like changing the oil in your car. Local governments plan on these dredgings on a periodic basis. We have a Ashby Pond in the city is being dredged for the first time, and we do it about every 10 years, and it's a little over, this little pond is over $1 million. So municipalities plan on these dredgings on a periodic basis. Lake Akkatink is going to be a huge, expensive project, but they'll be doing it again probably in 2035. So
right.
It happens every now and then. So
that was well said, David. Thank you. And yes, it's not the last time this will be done. It's a constant thing. But if you want the recreation, you want it to be a lake, you have to dredge it. It's expensive, but we have to do it.
That's right.
Yeah, nature likes climax forests. Liz, I noted that there's salvage excavations resulting from looting at Confederate fortifications. Was that very serious looting, or?
The looting actually happened early, I would say probably 6-7 months ago anyway. It was early to mid-COVID. And right now we are in the process of processing those artifacts. One of our natural resource colleagues was out doing a plant survey and noted that the area that there was a lot of back dirt and piles of things that apparently the people who were looting were finding to be uninteresting. So Chris Sperling at the time went out there and did salvage work. In other words, recovered what had already been dug up, did a formal few squares around it, identified it, and then covered it back up so that we could, appropriately process and map and whatever what it was. But it was as a result, because literally they were looking for something, and a lot of what they were finding, what they were coming across wasn't what they were looking for. So it was a kind of a willy-nilly pile of materials that were excavated, and a lot of the materials, which I'm sure drove the people, if the people were out there with metal detectors, I'm sure it drove them crazy, but a lot of the things were metal artifacts, but not the type of metal artifacts you sell on eBay. So, in any case, we're in the process of writing up a report on that little excavation and processing those artifacts.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments with regard to archaeology? All right. Heritage Conservation Branch here for that.
Megan, I'm here.
Megan, I'm sorry. It's been long enough since we started that I forgot you were here.
No problem. Okay, so quickly, I was able to give a presentation to the Historic House Museum Consortium on February 24th about the process that led towards the decision to build the collections facility. We received a small donation of items related to Sully Historic Site from the daughter of a person who had worked there. I will be attending, and then I think as an institution, there will be many people attending the Virginia Association of Museums virtual conference, which is online. And that was one of the last things that a lot of us did last year before everything shut down. Ann Stuntz is one of the last people that I talked to in person. She probably doesn't know that, but so I think several of us are excited to do that, and it looks like actually a really great program, and it looks like they really pivoted and were able to, I think, move it virtual. The request for proposals for the stabilization of the brick kitchen at Ash Grove are back on. It was happening last year around this time, but then it was put on hold for COVID. The wheel and the flume replacement project at Culver Run Mill is underway, and you can actually go there. I've been there several times for other things, and you can watch it, and it's pretty fascinating watching it happen. And then just the next HSVC event is scheduled for next weekend, March 13th on Saturday at Clemmy John Tree, and they're going to remove a non-historic bathhouse. So those are my updates for Heritage Conservation, and then Bob will give the RCP updates.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Megan? And I'm sorry I missed your House Consortium meeting. It sounded really interesting. I think I had a conflict. Okay. All right. Virginia Room. Is that Chris?
That's me.
Thank you.
All right. Are you all ready for some exciting news? If you've already read the agenda, just pretend to be surprised. But just going to mention this one thing. The complete run of the Fairfax Herald newspaper is going to be digitized. And I'm just going to pause here for a moment.
I saw that.
Shouts of rejoicing. Yes, I'm so excited.
Excellent.
Definitely.
I could have used it about a year ago, but I'm happy to have it.
We all could have used it years ago. We've been trying for years to convince the Library of Virginia to finally digitize it. And they finally did. They're going to work with us to get it done. The entire run of the Herald, 1886 to 1973, will be digitized by the Library of Virginia. And it's likely that they will be able to make all the available issues up to 1963 available on Virginia Chronicle, which is amazing because right now, anything that's fair game is up to 1925. And we're fortunate that the Herald didn't renew their copyright so they can put up to 1963. So the remaining years, they're just going to do the whole thing. They're just going to do one shot and digitize everything at once. So the remaining years, 1964 to 73, they're going to wait until the copyright runs out, which will probably be some time, but we're really excited. I'll be working with Errol Somay. He's the head of the newspaper digitization program at LVA. So stay tuned because it's pretty exciting.
That was quite the success there. That's amazing. Now the Alexandria Gazette.
Yes.
I'm greedy. I'm very greedy.
Those mid-century years, definitely. We'd love to get those online. And one last thing that didn't make the report, earlier this week, we received a donation of family letters and photos from a member of the longtime Fairfax County families, the Hummers and the Howdershells. So you might be familiar with Hummer Road in Annandale. That's them. That's this family. So the letters, they date from the early 1900s to about the 1920s. They talk about World War I, the pandemic, the flu going on, so rather timely. But the really neat addition is there's original photos of the Clark House over in Lanconia. So not long after it was built, which is pretty cool. So Liz, once I get that collection processed, I will send you the finding aid and scan those photos for you, and you could send them to whomever is in charge over there at the Park Authority of the Clark House.
Thank you very much, Chris. We appreciate it.
Definitely.
That sounds really cool. All right. I also noted the Virginia Room photographs. That is great too, to have those digitized, because the little tiny ones that you see at the Virginia Library are not as cool as the ones you guys have.
Yes, these will be much bigger. So far, as of tonight, let's see how many have I uploaded. 675, something like that. So you can actually blow them up. You can download them, which is fantastic. So we're really excited to finally have a platform that we can control and upload these photos for the public.
Wow, amazing.
So that will probably be rolled out probably around the springtime. So we're still working on that.
Any other comments, questions for Chris?
Just keep it up.
Will do.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Denise.
Thank you. So I always say Chris is such a tough act to follow. The Virginia Room just does such cool stuff. And I'm going to turn my video on. Here we go. Hi, everybody. So just to highlight, just a few highlights, you all have the written report. I wanted to specifically call out that we have some public meetings coming up at the end of the month, one for the Holland Hills potential HOD. That exact date is to be determined, but I know it will be the last week of March. So if you're interested in that, just check the webpage, the Holland Hills HOD webpage. The other thing that I wanted to call your attention to make sure that it's on everybody's calendar is the Pride of Fairfax National Register nomination stakeholders meeting is going to be this Monday, March 8th, this coming Monday, March 8th from 7 to 9. And you should have received an invitation to that meeting, as well as, and actually, let me just say this. I've had difficulties with the invitation from this meeting. So if you have had difficulties as well, we're going to be sending out another invitation. So you'll receive something again from the consultant to invite you to that meeting. So we would really appreciate your participation if you have any interest in Gum Springs and the Pride of Fairfax on Monday. You all got my news was the Soapstone Connector Association Drive consultation meeting, but we've already gone over that ground. So unless you have any further questions, I won't go ahead and update you on that. I will, however, circle back to an item that was on the last month's agenda, and then again this month. And I'm just going to go ahead and read this because it's a lot of information and I want to get it correct. So DPD staff reported last month, report last month included information about staff's proposal to apply to one of the state's grant programs in 2021, as we've done in previous years, first for the Ruston Architectural Survey, and then for the Pride of Fairfax National Register nomination. We would like to complete a historic context for the county's African American history, along with a countywide architectural survey. After consultation with DHR, we've decided to move forward with a cost share grant application to carry out a reconnaissance level survey for African American historic resources in Fairfax County and complete a survey report providing context and recommendations for future preservation projects. The cost share grant funding is structured so that the locality contributes a minimum of 50% to the projects. Weighted consideration is given to localities that can contribute more than 50%. And the benefit of the cost share program is that DHR manages the projects from start to finish using their contractors. Fauquier County recently completed a similar countywide survey, which includes 37 individual resources and 13 districts documented to a reconnaissance level survey for the total project cost was $20,000. In speaking with the state, we anticipate Fairfax's survey project to be approximately equivalent in scope and cost. We're in the very early phases of scoping the survey right now and data collection for scoping. However, the grant application, of course, is due April 2nd. So that's before your next meeting, which was April 7th. So I have to come and ask you now, or in these early phases without a whole lot of information, but ask you for your support. Certainly, if you would, a vote or a letter that I could include in the nomination, in the application package would be most appreciated. And then if there's any way that we could support the grant study financially, that would be terrific too. And I'm happy to take questions.
Denise, I apologize, Denise, for not seeing this until actually this evening when I read through your report more carefully. Otherwise, I would have put it on the agenda. Sorry, go ahead, Barbara.
Oh, I wanted to know if we have to commit to the funding at this time too, like tonight, or can we do a support with intent to support a motion for that in a letter, since this is so early?
Right. Well, I think the application has to spell out. The application it doesn't spell out the amounts and the donation amount, but it does spell out what the locality's contribution is versus what we're asking for.
All right.
My hope is that I can come up with cobble together about 15,000 and ask the state to support us in 5,000.
I asked that because if you remember, we were ready to do cost share on the earlier one, and then the BOS came through.
Yes.
So I'm so we set that aside. So
let's remember how much that was.
I'm trying to think as I'm talking.
7,000 or 8,000.
I think it was like 8,000. Barbara, sorry, Barbara.
Barbara Peters was okay.
I remembered 5,000, but if 8,000 was the total, I don't remember.
Is there any other source? Is there anybody but us that can help you with this?
I'm going to the Architectural Review Board next week, and I will be. And I've already talked to the chair and sort of let them know that is the request, and they seemed generally supportive as well. And I also talked with folks at One Fairfax, which is the equity arm in Fairfax County. And as soon as I have a scope, they asked me to provide it to them. So
Well, and I think that with One Fairfax, all of this that's going on, and of course with our African American History Initiative, and what we're doing is at this point just identifying places. So I think it all fits together beautifully. Therefore, I move that the History Commission commit $7,500 to the cost share program to have a countywide architectural survey. Is that what we're doing?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, there you go.
I second.
Mary Lipsey seconds also.
Is 75 enough, Denise?
I think so. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very generous.
That's what we're here for, right?
Right. You're
Very well timed.
Okay.
All right. So
If it's better, I think we can certainly afford it.
yeah.
all right. Other comments?
Who's
Discussion?
Any more discussion?
Just some point of information. On static, I think. Some information. Other sources of funding would be the National Trust for Historic Preservation. They give out smaller grants, but that might be one. And would the DHR be another place? I don't know, but they get grant and aid funds from the Park Service, and would that
So
be?
it's a grant from the DHR. From,
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
they would be a source of funding for sure.
Yeah.
The National Trust cycle, I think it ended in January. I think it's the very beginning of yeah.
Okay.
Sure, I think it did.
Okay.
But thank you for pointing those out for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further comment? So we go to a vote then. All in favor of approving, of supporting his cost share, $75.
7,500.
7,500. Right.
Yes.
$7,500. All in favor? Say aye.
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 And any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, passes. And that was moved by, that was Barbara, right?
Yes.
Barbara Yates. And who seconded that?
That's Tammy.
Tammy, okay. Just for the record, thank you.
And I'm happy to help you write a letter.
So I was going to ask part of that. Yeah, it does make a difference. The local support from the historical organizations does make a difference in the application consideration. So
right,
I'm gonna already have my pen out. So
there you go.
That's another letter.
Sorry to say this, but do we have to make a motion to approve that letter?
But I was just thinking.
Dang it.
We can do it. I make a motion that we write the letter to support the cost share application in time for the April 2nd deadline.
I second, Jordan.
Okay. All those
Again, it's just in keeping with we always try to vote on things that we have to do in between meetings.
Good idea.
Good point.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any oppositions or abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes. And yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah, and we'll sort out who will write that letter. When is that? Is letters due by April 2nd?
The application is due by April 2nd. So if you could maybe get it to me the day before, that would be super.
All right, end of March. You might be able to manage that.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much, staff, for reporting. Thank you very much for all the staff members who turned your reports in early. It really helps me to keep focused and follow what's going on. Committee reports. Lynn has ducked out, but I think she said that
For the
Esther, were you
history
going to stay up at the conference? Yeah.
Yes. I'm reporting for Lynn Garvey Hodge on the History Conference Committee report. We had a meeting on February 24th, WebEx, and those present were Esther, Cheryl, Denise, Barbara, Jordan, Phyllis, Liz, and Lynn. We began discussing how to set up our next history conference. Will probably be virtual due to the times that we live in, and the audience that we serve is older. And the dates that were mentioned were possibly November 6th or 13th, either the first Saturday or second Saturday. We considered the content, and we did come up with having a 4-part conference schedule over 4 years. The first year, which is this year, would start with the Fairfax County Native Americans, and then the African Americans. That's the content for the first conference, which is this year. We have confirmations from some of the folks we talked about. She had heard from Marion Dobbins Cohen, who would like to participate. She's a reenactor, and we've had her before. Spencer Crew was suggested. He has not been contacted yet. Noah Cincinnati was confirmed as a presenter on the Native American.
Actually, I think he's speaking on slavery.
Yes, yes. So our next meeting is March 24th, 7:30 p.m. WebEx. And we will have to continue to discuss the content and the arrangement of the program itself. So that's about it. She had a lot of verbiage here, but I tried to pick out the most important things that you would need to know now.
I think
so we look forward to March 24th.
I think you covered it very well, Esther. Thank you. Appreciate it. Unless there are any questions for Esther, move on to Phyllis and Mary on the African American inventory.
Okay. The African American Initiative Committee met on February the 9th with 14 members in attendance, and we covered an array of topics. This was our first meeting, and so we did a lot of discussion about how and what type of product we would have for the inventory. We looked at possible methods, which would be how would we identify the things and provide references and links. We also looked at what African American history may be out there in the communities, and each member of the committee was going to go to their districts and look at what African American history may have been already collected, and make a list of that and report back at our next meeting. looked at who we may ask to participate to help us collect some of this data. So we looked at historical societies, historical museums, community organizations, churches, and statewide organizations. That's pretty much the bulk of what we actually discussed in that first meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 9th at 2:30. Mary, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
The only thing is I myself make a list of African-American cemeteries in the county, including slave cemeteries, church cemeteries, etc. And also markers, including history markers, state markers, etc. I'm getting old hand at this stuff. So anyway, I made those lists and I passed them on to Phyllis. I think I put draft at the top because I'm not confident that I found everything, but it certainly was very interesting for me to put together.
And I, for one, am keeping, this is Barbara Nate, I'm for one trying to keep you, Chris, appraised of what we're doing, because I know that you have materials there already. So that's, for us. So I'm dealing with, Ann and I are dealing with Hunter Mill, so it's interesting, but progress is being made, I think.
All right, thank you. Other comments or questions? Everybody. Just out that background. Yeah, no, it's a very exciting project. All right, Gretchen,
Semi-quincentennial. All right, so the State Commission met on February 12th, and the focus of the meeting was a presentation that was funded by the Virginia Tourism Corporation with survey results from African-American travelers to Virginia. And African-American heritage tourism is a $1.1 billion industry, and it's crucial that travelers feel safe, welcome, and that they belong at Virginia tourism destinations. So that was really the conversation that was focused at the meeting. For the Fairfax County Work Group, that meeting was held on February 19th. Mary Lipsey, Patrick Lennon, who you all know from Visit Fairfax, and our own Laura Wickstead, we shared ideas and lessons learned from previous Fairfax County commemorations, including the Sesquicentennial, World War I, and the Fairfax 275th. So that's what's happened since we last talked. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments for Gretchen? Anne is going to report for the inventory committee while Elise is on a leave of absence. Anne Stuntz.
Thank you. Thank you. We have met on March 1st, and we discussed the primary piece of business was the William Goldsmith House, 1 mile from my house, and just outside Vienna. And you will have received that today. The way it works, you'll all remember that is that if you receive it this month as a non-inventory member, then we vote on it next month. So do have a look at what you got today. And if you didn't get it, let me know. And again, when you're looking at it, just note that the person who submitted it ticked off the architectural criteria at the top, but in discussions, and thank you, Denise, for really making us think about it. It's exemplifying cultural, economic, social, political, or historic heritage rather than that. So that's that we agree. It's a circa 1918 house back on a funny little long skinny lot, and it really is just a piece of an element of those times that's becoming very rare around here. So we agreed to move it forward. We also, the plaque is gorgeous. It's a big oval on its side that Cheryl and Elise made, and so that's going to get up on the website sometime this month, right? And our next meeting, was there anything else we were going to say? Our next meeting is April 5th at 7:30.
And just to answer a question that Mary brought up earlier today, we are going to be addressing Preston and Tolliver.
Carter.
Tolliver
Carter. Yeah.
Yep.
At the April 5th meeting? Yeah. Good. So we're hoping that we're going to ask the I forgot to put this in my minutes. We're going to ask the public information folks to put out some information on this press release, social media, about the availability of the inventory plaque, because nobody wants to write to them all again for the second time in 2 years. So we try to keep that to a minimum. Any questions? Okay.
All right.
My one question is, how in the world did they end up with such a skinny, long piece of property?
Isn't it crazy? It really doesn't show, except for, you can follow when it got carved out, and it was just someone showing very bad judgment. That's all I can think of.
And Barbara, it seems to be that is the property that the house was built on. It's not like it got whittled down to that.
No, that's right. Just maybe they had crops and had things they didn't want to they didn't want to interrupt the farming. And so they said, here's the little piece if you want to build a house, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's a really good question. A really good question.
Jordan here. Can I, can I go back to the sesquicentennial, the 250th, just one moment? First, a question to Gretchen. Gretchen, if I missed a notice about a meeting, my apologies, but if you could.
No, Jordan, we're not going to meet for a while. There's really nothing for us to do. And I had sent out a note asking for like a common meeting day, and there isn't one. So we're going to have to work on it.
Okay. The second thing is, although there aren't any Native Americans in, there are Native Americans in Virginia, but there aren't any groups in Fairfax County, either state recognized or nationally recognized. I do think that, the way I look at the 250th, it's not really a celebration, it's a commemoration. And I think that we need to be creative as to how we tell that story. But one of the things that I'm trying to get the museum to do is to indicate before meetings, or before even maybe put a plaque in, that we are on land that was owned, that was inhabited by other people, that we weren't the first. I think creative ways to make that known is important, because Native American history just really isn't on isn't on the screen at all. And I think that's important. The other is to consider a youth initiative of some sort, because history is such a diminishing subject in schools and universities. Just some thoughts I have as you get started with this project.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
My kids listen to a podcast that started every episode with, "We are on land that was once, inhabited by a particular people."
Right.
Yeah, and for Fairfax County, it would be a number of people that could probably help us with that.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Where am I now? Inventory. Thank you, Anne. And markers. Mary, you're up next. Markers and cemetery preservation.
We have so many areas of use of Native American language, Potomac, Accotink, etc. If anything, we could spread that information. Okay, am I being heard? I don't know.
Yes.
Okay. I did meet with RA Calendar, Supervisor Palchik's office, and I mentioned, that they were considering having a marker contest for the youth of Fairfax County. And I have not heard anything more on that. But the idea was to get them to draft markers that could possibly be put in to the ground and looking at 4th, 7th, and 11th grade, because those are the years that they study American history in school. So I will keep you informed if I hear any more. But I thought that was a neat thing we could do. For marker committee, the only thing I need to say is that there 2 markers have been ordered, James Lee Elementary School and the Carrolltown markers have been ordered. And I hope they come in at the same time so I don't have to make a lot of different trips. But I'll let you know when that's happening. With cemetery committee, I have a DAR chapter who is trying to locate and mark the grave of an African-American, and I have to read this, John Pipsico, who was a resident of Alexandria, who was a soldier in the American Revolutionary War. And I found an article, obituary for him in a newspaper that he died in Alexandria in 1842 at the age of 93, being a respected man. The newspaper was the Brooklyn Evening Star, not the Alexandria Gazette. So I'm trying to find, they would love to know if he's buried, in Fairfax County or Alexandria and be able to mark the grave. I'm putting this out. If anybody has any suggestions, where to go. I mean, we've done the usual genealogy, and one of the DAR members actually has a descendant who's living in California, and contacting that descendant to see if they might have any information. If anybody has any, hints on where to look, I'd appreciate it. And then also our cemetery association is working with several different groups on cleanups at various family cemeteries. And that's it.
Thank you, Mary. Anybody have any questions or comments for Mary?
Mary Ann Barnes.
Yes.
Just a question. Could you please give me the name of the surname of the veteran?
Yeah. Let me spell it for you. It's P as in Peter, I P S I C O. I can send you the newspaper article if you'd like to read it.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to see that. Thank you.
Because it's listed with other deaths, not necessarily in New York. So somehow this has been picked up in Brooklyn, and advertising it did say he died in Alexandria. So it's curious.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Hey, Mary, this is Chris. I just say, could you send me the article as well? I'll see what we can find as well. Thanks.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Anybody else?
Not for me. I'm done.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary. Ethnic and cultural history. Oops, Ann, go ahead.
Sue and I have a meeting with on the big oak tree in Oakton tomorrow with Supervisor Palchik. So that will be interesting. She's has an opinion about the wording of the marker that the Greater Oakton Group and the Hunter Mill Defense League has come up with. So we'll let you know how that went next time.
So, and this is a private marker, right?
That's
Yeah.
correct. It's
Right.
it's private money plus
Right.
Greater Oakton. They've done fundraising plus Hunter Mill Defense League.
Okay.
I think it's getting, you probably know better, Mary. I think it's getting supervisor input because VDOT asked for it.
Okay. Well, they approached me.
It's on VDOT right away.
They had approached me, and there's very little documentation.
That's right. You have to say according to local law.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know who that local law is? Some of it's my father.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Esther, or ethnic and oral history.
Yes. Our committee has not met. We waited for the contact from Channel 16, Pam Gardner, and that contact was made. She spoke with me, and we decided that a delay was in order because of the COVID-19 situation. And they had requested that we come to Channel 16, which I think is a bad idea, but because the vaccinations are being given there, there's a lot of public traffic going on. But we decided to delay, and she said the next chance to do the interviews would be in April. So now I'm waiting here again for their schedule to tell me when we can invite people to these interviews. I'd like a committee meeting on March 25th at 7:30, and I'll send information to Denise so that we can finalize some things and be ready whenever she says they have an opening.
I wonder if we should, is it crazy just to get in touch with, well, we can talk about it as a committee, but April's really soon. So, you know, I wonder if we should attack the first people on our list and just say we're going to be setting a date. Would they want to be part of it? Before we even have a meeting, because that's, you know, 5 days before April.
Yes.
And if we have our wish list, we could get a hold of the first few and just see, you know, just to try to abbreviate this process, because otherwise we'll be in the same boat we were last month when they said they wanted to do it in February.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for the suggestion, Anne.
You're welcome.
So that's the end of my brief report.
All right, thank you, Esther. Appreciate it. And yeah, that is a good suggestion, Anne. I'll certainly follow up and contact the.
Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
Ann Barnes. I think I'm next on the list there, but I was going to say something about, I believe Esther said March 25th for a meeting.
Yes. For ethnic and oral history, yes.
I think, well, I'm planning on having a meeting on that date at 7:30, a WebEx meeting. I'm going to give that information in my report next, but I just wanted to mention.
So I beat you to it?
Yes, you beat me to it.
well,
I'll wait my turn. I'll wait for my turn.
Okay. Well, it may also just be that Anne already has that meeting scheduled with Denise. So, you know, we have to coordinate with staff to make sure that we have a staff person
Do you have it scheduled, Ann?
Yes, yes, I do. And I think Denise is on the line right now.
Okay, I'll move.
I had
I'll move back to Tuesday, the 23rd.
If I may, rather than having, so that would be 3 night meetings in a row for me. We can keep both meetings at the same time, and I can, as long as your committee members don't overlap, and that's not a conflict for the committee members. And I can just get somebody else to run one of the 2 meetings.
Okay.
So, because there's a meeting on the 24th for the conference committee.
That's right.
Yeah, so that would be 3 night meetings in a row for me.
So I'm not aware of your members, and
okay. I heard something else mentioned earlier. Can I just go ahead and start talking now? Cheryl.
Perhaps coordinate offline.
Oh, sure, we can coordinate offline.
Okay.
Between Esther and Ann. I know you do have some membership overlapping. I don't know how thoroughly they overlap.
Thank you.
But I think trying to figure that all out and intersect all of those different schedules is going to take a while. So actually, Bob Beach and the curator program, that is up next. Thank you, Ann. Bob, did you fall asleep?
No, I didn't fall asleep. I'm trying to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't plan you had fallen asleep by now. It's getting kind of late.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that to you. Anyway, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I am not going to worry about it. I'll just let it go. Anyway, there was History Commission's 2020 Resident Curator Program. The Board of Supervisors public hearing is for the full term lease at the Hampy Clark and Yeti House will be held on March 23rd, 2021. Time is not yet determined. The curator's current interim PAB lease expires in April of this year, 2021. The Board of Supervisors public hearing for the lease on the service source for Elmore Farmhouse will be held in the upcoming months, but the date has not yet been determined. The curator at Turner Farmhouse continues improvements at the farmhouse interior, including painting and trim, while the special exception application is under the Department of Planning and Zoning review. The curator at Stemson House continues with the master bedroom renovation, or excuse me, bathroom renovation, with covered porch repairs and as an upcoming project, I guess when the weather gets a little better. Staff is working with park operations to evaluate and repair the well and septic system at Margaret White Gardens. He's the report. Nice and short.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bob. Anybody have any comments or questions about the resident curator program? And you do have that the text of that report is in the Heritage Conservation Branch report.
Right.
You can, just for folks who want to.
Cheryl?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is Ann Barnes. I think I was before Bob. My bylaws committee was before Bob's report, I think. I'm not looking at the agenda, but I think that was before Bob's report. It was right after Esther's report.
Not on the printout that I have, and I'm sorry, you are up right now, Bob, Ann, so you're next.
Oh, Ann Barnes is up next?
Yeah. And
okay.
So if you're traditionally were in a different order, I may have.
Oh, okay.
As things jump around on the page, things might have gotten out of order, but that's what I have on the printout that I have.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss reporting this. We were originally scheduled for a WebEx meeting on February the 25th at 7 o'clock. that had to be pushed out to Esther March 25th. So I believe that Denise already has that out on WebEx, and we talked about that just a few moments ago. So March 25th at 7 o'clock is when the next bylaws meeting is. And I just wanted to read the names who are on the bylaws committee. I'm hoping that we can all, most of us, be there. Your Cheryl is our newest member, and Stan, whom I had spoken to a week earlier about the meeting that we were supposed to have last week, and Lynn, who's not on the line right now. Carol, I think she's still on the line right now, and I'm calling the names out right now. And Elise, did I hear you say that she's on a leave of absence?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
So she feels more up to it.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, and myself. So with the names that I've called off, and even if one is weren't able to be there, we have enough to have a quorum, which was the reason why we really couldn't meet last week. But hopefully on the 25th of March, we can have a quorum and have our meeting. We can move on with what we need to do with bylaws. And we'll just take it from there.
Is the quorum effective of absence, or does that make it a smaller committee? Does anybody know?
Our quorum, because of, I guess, our membership on this committee is 4 people.
I think it might be less, and if Elise is not counted as a member because she's taken a leave of absence.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we
Thank
have
you
to
for
like,
answering that.
yeah.
And as Esther, I think myself and Lynn are all on your committee as well. So I don't know that we can have.
Yes, we'll have to find another date.
Okay.
And Ann Barnes, with that report, I'm sorry, I didn't get into that.
That's my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience. Ann Stone's anything to report for advocacy?
We have not had a meeting. No, nothing to report.
All right. And Lisa's obviously not here, so there's no report from the ARB. David, what is going on in Fairfax City?
On Thursday, February 25, our Connecting Fairfax City for All program had a presentation on the 1902 Virginia Constitutional Convention and the profound impact it's had on disenfranchisement of African Americans and the rise of the codification of white supremacy in Virginia that pretty much had an impact over the next 70 years until the 1970 Constitution was adopted. So that was a profound program. It was extremely well attended. We've received a lot of positive feedback on that program. And the committee is moving forward to their next steps, which is developing a process by which that they will consider recommendations for the remaining streets and other nomenclature referencing the Confederacy. On another matter, the City Council is in the midst of its annual budget review and adoption on the first week of May. Included in this budget is a 5-year capital improvements program. One item in that capital improvements program for 2023, which is a year from now, is a $50,000 item for very preliminary assessment of the future of the Fairfax City Museum. And the goal is hopefully by the end of the decade that we would possibly consider a physical addition to that building. The building was constructed, the first part of that building was constructed in 1873. This would be architecturally consistent with that. And the goal would be to enable the City Museum to be accredited, thus making it eligible for certain kinds of exhibits from the Smithsonian and other institutions that might bring traveling exhibits to the city. We also have a considerable inventory of historic materials in storage that we would like to be able to house in this expanded facility. But this is a decade-long effort. This is our first step in that direction. Obviously, we're talking of incredibly extensive commitment on the part of the city, and it's all contingent on economic recovery and competing priorities. But at least the money is in the budget for this preliminary assessment of the building. And that's what I have to report. Thank you.
David?
Go ahead, Ann.
I think yeah, it is. The fellows talk is available from last Thursday, right?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. And I, of course, was competing between two outstanding programs. The other program was Ann Stuntz providing a historical review of the town of Vienna from 1950 to 1970 on behalf of the class of 1970 of Madison High School, of which I am a member. So that our class was very appreciative of Ann's hand-cultivated personal presentation to all of us, which was lively and well received. But I digress. It had nothing to do with the city of Fairfax.
But the main thing is, because we both had to miss the program, it's sitting there available, and so we will now be able to see it, and all of you all will too. And I don't know much about that 1902 Constitution, so I'm going to watch it.
It is a remarkable presentation. I actually saw the first 30 minutes.
Good.
And the role of future Senator E.C. Glass in pushing this through is, it's a fascinating and horrific story that is not told in our local school systems in their history classes, but it probably was one of the most profound historical events of the last 150 years in Virginia, and it needs to be told to more people so that they can understand the subsequent events between 1900 and 1970. But you're right. It is going to be posted and made available to people to watch.
Good, thanks.
And I strongly endorse everyone watching it. Thank you.
You'll send us the link?
I can do it right now because I'm on it.
Okay.
I'll do that right now.
Thank you, Ann.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I attended it. It was really good, and I think the City of Fairfax Connecting series so far, the 3 I've been to, are really good, really powerful. Good discussions afterward too.
Yeah, that is all I have to report. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was really interesting and really cool to think of expanding the Fairfax City Museum. All right, let us proceed into announcements. Carol Herrick, I know you are not visible, so do you have any announcements today?
Carol had to jump off. Cheryl.
Oh, did you? Okay. Understandable. Steve Sherman, are you still with us?
I don't think he is.
Okay. And Bob, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't have any comments.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you're actually visible.
Finally figured it out, yeah.
Anybody else have any announcements? Chime in or raise your hand if necessary if we start all jumping on top of one another.
I have one. The FOFA event, which we may or may not be able to get more people into, but we certainly will try on Saturday. Don't forget, all is not lost. On May 1st, there is a field trip to Abington that is conducted by one of the archaeologists who has done research there. That's at National Airport. It should be really, really fascinating. So stay tuned, and hopefully that we'll be able to pull it off. I know that Mount Vernon Regional Historical Society has been able to have field trips successfully. So we'll see how this works.
Wow.
Sounds good.
Cheryl, it's Mary.
Go ahead, Mary.
I'd like to wish everyone here a Women's History Month celebration. Everybody should be congratulating ourselves. And on next Saturday, on the 13th at George Mason Regional Library, virtually, I'll be doing Finding Your Loved Ones Beyond Ancestry. And this is a workshop that I do about using National Archives records, all sorts of information where people think I stop with ancestry, okay? And so it's something I've done, and usually I do it with people having laptops right in front of them, so I'm going to encourage them to do that. But paper and pencil would work too if they want to take notes. So, and that's at 4 p.m. from the library events thing at George Mason Regional Library.
All right, thank you. What was the date again?
Saturday, March 13th at 4.
Okay, thank you.
This is
Barbara. Go ahead.
Barbara. Chris did not mention that the Confederate names inventory collection is finished, thanks to him. We still were with him on this, so it's all done. So all the research and everything that's there. So I wanted to make note. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Barbara. Forgot to mention it.
That's all right. I remembered.
Anybody else have an announcement to share? In the vein of thanking staff, I want to thank all the staff members who attended the African American inventory meeting. I noticed that in a number of staff reports. Thank you. Any other?
No more. May I make a motion to adjourn?
I think that would probably do quite well.
I second, Jordan.
I third.
Third, fourth.
Well, yeah. Fortunately, we had a perfect storm with regard to some of these, Sections 106 kinds of issues and farm as well. So, thank you everybody for hanging in for the full 3-hour meeting.
Thank you, Cheryl.
We need to have an aye for everybody in support of that motion to adjourn.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you and good night, everyone. We are adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.